quite a lot of rain on my glasses this morning because I've literally just come in. It's pouring here on the West Coast in California. We've been hit with this storm and it's been bucketing for 2 or 3 days now. So I apologize, but I haven't got, windscreen wipers fitted because I'm not that fancy. It's 9 o'clock here on the West Coast. This is Backchannel. I'm Anthony Davis, and you've got me for a couple of hours as we spend the morning together. We're going to chat about the news and the world. You're going to get in touch, if you want to, by waking up your device, saying say, and then your message, because this is the only place that you can watch and chat with hosts of live shows right here on your device. It's called Backchannel. I'm in Los Angeles. Carla's producing the show. She's in London. And if you want to message the show and you don't have an echo show, then you can go to backchannel.tv. You can leave a review there as well. And you can even watch this show live on YouTube. There you go. I forgot what it was called just then. So, what are we going to look at today? Well, we've got the Alaskan climate crisis to discuss. We've got the tiger that was shot and died at Naples Zoo in Florida after biting a cleaner's arm. And today's big debate is the reason I'm laughing is because I've just discovered that Carla has called this the big debate. But today's big debate, just like yesterday's big debate, but today's big debate, I can't stop saying it now. Today's big debate is, are you for or against zoos? I'm actually for them, but for children. As in, the kids should be in the cages. I'm only talking about my own children, of course. And also tonight, President Biden will speak on the phone with Russia's Vladimir Putin for the second time this month. They're basically having a bromance. It's a bid to de-escalate tensions over Ukraine, and we'll be discussing about that Ukraine conflict and working out what it's all about and explain the background and hoping to inform you a little on the developments so you can get your head around what it's all about. And also on this day in American history, the 30th of December 1924, the astronomer Edwin Hubble formally announced the existence of other galactic systems at a meeting of the American Astronomical Society. He had a big debate that day. Big debate with Edwin and his associated astronomers. So we'll take a look back at his discovery. So that's how it looks. Thank you for joining me. If you kind of wake up and you tune in and you want to chat, then I'll see your name pop up on the screen. I'll give you a mention. Whatever you want to talk about is fine by me. Let's jump straight into the newspapers this morning. We're going to start with the Miami Herald. Because we always like to keep an eye on Miami, Florida, Ron DeSantis. You know, Ron DeSantis has not been seen for nearly 3 weeks. Are you aware of that? Since he said all this stuff about no masks and freedom and the numbers, the coronavirus numbers in the state of Florida have gone through the roof. Where is the governor? Nowhere to be seen. The Miami Herald. I'm saying Florida. Normally I would say Miami, Florida. For some reason, because it's early in the morning here, I've decided to Herald it up. A photograph of Ghislaine Maxwell with the headline, Guilty. Ghislaine Maxwell could get decades in prison for helping Jeffrey Epstein. Well, that is a simplified way of putting it, Miami Herald, isn't it? For helping. I mean, she wasn't the home help. She was effectively a sex offender herself. She joined in. She groomed people. She didn't just help him. She was into it as well. That's the tragedy of this. And also, I really don't like seeing a kind of big, shiny color photo of her on the front of the newspaper. It's distasteful. But it is the Miami Herald, so anything goes. It says, after deliberating for days, a jury in Manhattan found Ghislaine Maxwell guilty of 5 of 6 counts in her sex trafficking trial. And another photo of her giving Epstein a foot massage on their private jet. I mean, why would you do that? People read this newspaper when they have their breakfast. You got a mouthful of cornflakes and you have to see Epstein's feet in her hands. It's disgusting. Also, as we've just mentioned, Florida breaks its single-day record of COVID-19 cases. It says Florida reported 46,923 new COVID-19 cases, the largest single-day increase in cases since the pandemic began, and nearly double the previous peak during the summer. Well, there it is. That's what I'm talking about. And where's Ron DeSantis? Vanished. Vanished. I mean, I was thinking that it would be kind of useful if all the evidence against the garbage that people like DeSantis and Ron Johnson and these Greg Abbott, these various Republican, far-right senators and governors, as physical evidence starts to come out, as in 46,923 cases in Florida, which directly opposes their policies. Basically just proves without a shadow of a doubt that their policies are failing. That's kind of, I don't want that to happen because I don't want people to get ill, but I also want people to recognize that their advice on how to survive coronavirus is false. And the proof now is in the data. Okay, so that's the Miami Herald. Let's move on to another newspaper. We'll whiz through these today because we've got a lot to talk about. We're going to stay in the state of Florida because we've got the Tampa Bay Times now. Gun Forum aims to curb violence. We need your help, a senior black officer says, on a day when 2 people are shot dead. Oh, goodness. I was listening on the radio in Los Angeles this morning about this girl, this 14-year-old girl who was shot dead by police by accident in a Hollywood department store. She was in a shop, actually, a clothing shop. And they said the way they reported it was just, there was just no urgency. It's, I hate how normalized police brutality is, because that's what it is. It's police brutality. And, these shootings are executions. They're actually public executions, which was something that was outlawed a long time ago. You might as well bring back hanging for the amount of people that the LAPD shoot. And the newscaster said, oh, well, they've only executed, well, they didn't say that. They've only shot, they say shot when they mean murdered. They've only shot 18 people so far this year. And I was like, only? And then they said, because in the 90s, it was normal for the LAPD to shoot 100 people a year. 100 in the 90s. Do you ever think back to those days and think how thoughtless we were as a society? When you consider now that only now people are starting to talk about equality, women's rights, civil rights. Do you see what I mean? It's like there was a movement in the 50s and the 60s, and that probably lasted until maybe the mid-80s, and then that kind of, the energy behind that, dissipated. And now I feel we had 25 years after that where these things weren't really, because in the 80s, women became, second-class citizens again. It's like people forgot what all this effort was for. And then racism in the 90s and the noughties became more prevalent, and now here we are again, having to deal with a whole new civil rights movement, a whole new voting rights movement, a whole new women's rights movement. And it makes me think during those years when I was growing up that I think, there was a lot of money around then. I mean, I know that there was a crash in the early 90s, but really there was a lot of money around then. It was a boom period, wasn't it? And now we're in this situation where poverty is rife, disease is rife, and, with the former president in charge, civil rights, race rights, culture wars, division, hatred, it all came back. So now we're having to be extra vigilant. Now we're having to watch ourselves. I mean, I have a relative, I won't say who it is, but she is in her 60s, and she said has said a few times on this trip, because she's visiting, oh, yes, I'm going to see my gay friend. I'm going to see my gay friend. And I'm like, you can't say that. And she's like, why not? And I'm like, because you can't call out someone's sexuality. Like, that's not how you introduce people. You could say, I'm going to go and see my friend David, but you don't go, my gay friend David, in the same way that you wouldn't go, my straight friend Anthony. And she was like, what are you talking about? He's gay. And I said, yeah. And, you know, you don't have to highlight his sexuality. It might be a novelty for you having a gay friend, but it's not a novelty for him being gay. It's the same as you being straight. And he doesn't announce you as his straight friend. She could not get her head around this. She said, well, he calls himself gay. I was like, that's not the argument. That's not the argument that I'm having. You know? Quite something. So we just have to check ourselves, and it's our responsibility. I mean, I'll be honest, I find pronouns to be a step too far. I personally find pronouns a step too far, especially when you're asking just hetero people their pronouns. I think pronouns are probably more applicable to minority groups, but I don't know that hetero pronouns are necessary. But then again, I mean, just do what you want, you know? Just do what you want. And this is the interesting thing, isn't it? That we're living in this world now where people worry about being cancelled. They use that phrase. I would never use that phrase because it doesn't make sense to me. Invariably, the people that complain about being cancelled are the people that like to say racist things or xenophobic things. They're the people that are actually angry about being cancelled. I don't fear being cancelled because I don't really have anything worthy of cancellation to say. Or at least I will happily converse. And I will absolutely converse and take it to the line if you want to get deep and, you know, have a deep and meaningful. But we have a whole generation of people, including my relative, who doesn't realize that you can't say, my gay friend David. You just can't say it. She doesn't get it. Like I explained it in like 6 different ways. And she accused me of cancelling her. I wish David was there. He could have defended himself. That's the hard thing, is when you're having to defend somebody else who isn't even present, or indeed a whole group of people who aren't present. It's difficult. Anyway, good morning to you. Good morning. Lots of people joining in. Paolo is with us this morning. Stacey's with us. Thanks for spending your morning here on the Backchannel. Rosie's here as well. Morning, Rosie. Morning, Stacey. Morning, Rosie. There you go. I think that's everyone, I'd say. Okay, so let's move on with the newspapers here, because that was basically, that whole diatribe came off the back of this story of a gun forum aiming to curb violence, and somehow I managed to get into pronouns. I don't quite know how. 5 facts about variants. Tampa General Hospital has advice how to deal with Omicron, it says. As the number of COVID-19 infections spikes across the state, hospitals are preparing for a new wave of patients. Florida reported 125,000 coronavirus cases over the 7-day period through December 23rd. I mean, there's literally nothing on DeSantis. He has completely vanished. Missing in action. Yeah, the guy has done a runner, because all of his advice now has been rendered obsolete, foolish, wasteful. And you know, if you're a true leader, you take responsibility. You stand up for your decisions. You stand behind them. You take responsibility. Nobody resigns in this country. That's the other thing that I've noticed that is different from where I come from in England. You know, like we famously had a member of parliament who pretended his wife was driving the car when he got done for speeding by a camera, and it was like 3 points on his license and a fine, and he didn't want to take the fine because he was an MP and he didn't want to, that was like a stain on his character. So he pretended that it was his wife driving and she took the points. And of course they found out and he resigned. Do you remember that story, Carla? I think he was a Liberal Democrat. I can't remember who it was. I mean, I can see his face, but I can't remember his name. My life has moved on so much since those days. But he basically gave the points to his wife, and that was enough of a crime in his mind to quit as an MP. And the point is that there's a thing missing in America that we still enjoy in England. It's called shame. And shame is like a very valuable property because it keeps people in check. And, Trump had no shame. He was quite happy to be a sexual predator and, all this stuff. No shame. It's fine. No shame. Who was it? It was Chris Huhne. That's right. Yes, the Liberal Democrat. Yeah. I have a weird memory for these stories that have happened. What was that, like 15 years ago or something? 8 years ago. 8 years ago. Yeah, I mean, he resigned, and this is my point. It's like if there's no shame, then you're going to basically have people like Mitch McConnell who have installed themselves at the very heart of American government for decades. And a scandal will come and go, it'll blow over them, but if they have no shame, they will never face the consequences. Because they just don't care. And that's how I feel with DeSantis. He doesn't care. He knows he'll just stay out of the limelight for a little while, and then as the numbers come down, he'll show back up again. He'll go, look, the numbers came down. That's what he'll do. He'll take responsibility for the numbers coming down in a couple of weeks' time. Except they're not going to. I mean, Fauci predicts that the end of January is when this is all going to kick off in America. And I actually did a tweet 10 days ago that was a prediction. Sometimes I do a tweet and it starts with the word prediction. And my prediction was that Omicron is going to ravage the United States. I use that word. And that by the end of January, everybody is going to get it. And I tested myself last night. I do not have coronavirus, but I fear that I probably will get it. And even though I'm protected and vaccinated and masked, I just know how transmissible this is because everybody I know's got it. Everyone's got it. So I'll probably be sitting here in this isolation space with coronavirus. You actually get to see what a human looks like whilst they're hosting a show with coronavirus, because I'm sure there'll be a couple of days where I'll be too ill to work. But being a freelancer, no worky, no pay, I'll be here. Unless I'm on death's door. I mean, I've done shows with like serious flesh wounds. I've done shows with pneumonia, a double pneumonia once, did a show with that. Did a show with a peritonsillar abscess. I've done shows whilst submitting to multiple illnesses. No worky, no pay. The curse of freelance. I might take my lifesaver off now, It's getting a bit warm in here. I'm starting to chuck up a little bit. It's probably the coronavirus. It's a very noisy coat, this. My advice is if you're doing voiceovers, never wear a scratchy coat like that. That's my advice. Okay, on the front of the Tallahassee Democrat, it says, mental health field preparing for a surge in services. Yes, that's right. It says, pandemic life has taken a toll on many people. Mental health professionals are anticipating a surge in need for services in the spring. I feel like I'm on a huge screen in someone's house. That's how it feels, anyway. Wary from lockdowns and anxiety over a virus that has killed 765,000 Americans, at least 516 of them in Leon County, there is a delayed psychological response in people who experience such acute stress, said Dr. Jay Reeve, the president and CEO of the Alapashi Center. It's a response that in itself, it's been delayed through the ups and downs of the pandemic. Yeah, I've actually thought about this. Because, we've got used to living in this weird way now, right? Well, it's quite normal to go into Trader Joe's with 2 masks and a yashmak on. That's kind of normal. But at the same time, there is this kind of isolationism that we are facing. The only thing I do, pretty much, is go to the supermarket. It's like kind of the only thing I do. And off the back of Omicron, loads of people getting in touch. Michael, Stacy, Paolo, Jagat, thank you. And Eric's just shown up from Pennsylvania. Eric, welcome, good morning. Because of Omicron, I've decided I'm going to buy my groceries on the internet, on the World Wide Web. on the web. Do you remember when we used to say the web? Or we used to say on the net. I'm buying it on the net. I just remembered the name of the. I never used Google when the internet first started. Like I never used Google because I never thought it would catch on. And I'm a good one for spotting a craze. So I used Metacrawler. Do you remember that one? Metacrawler. I wonder if that still exists. Metacrawler.com. I used to use Metacrawler, and I would tell everybody I found the best search engine. I said, you can keep your AOL. I found the best search engine, Metacrawler. Of course, it didn't last, I was on the Googles in no time. So just looking at this story that says what we anticipated was we would get through the initial spikes of COVID. As the vaccines rolled out, a lot of us predicted that we were going to see the spike in the service demand. He and others in the mental health profession say those under 18 may need the most help in the coming months. When the pandemic began, waned, then surged again with continued mutations of the virus, the number of, see page 5A. Okay. If you want to see page 5A of the Tallahassee Democrat, you'll get the rest of that story. It's 9:22 on the West Coast. Good morning. This is Backchannel. It's the 30th of December. Just one more day until the 30 days of September, April, June, and November, all the rest. We have another day until New Year's Eve. And a whole other day. Family law leads to slave cemetery. A field of pink in... What is this? Oh, Gloria Anderson will tell you if you know how to listen, the land will talk to you. Then you can reclaim its history. Her persistent search for her great-grandparents' burial plot now has led Leon County to close a section of a greenway. The state's Division of Historical Resources and county staff confirmed Anderson's findings. There's an abandoned cemetery behind the Testarina Privative Baptist Church, about a mile north of Edenfield Road. Don't all rush there. But that's kind of interesting, isn't it? This is basically a field in the middle of nowhere. And her and a whole group of, family members have worked out where their enslaved ancestors were buried. And of course, these are unmarked graves because they were the graves of slaves. And so they found this location. And now the local city have basically written trail closed, put signs up. This is the site of the historic New Hope Cemetery. It's amazing. There's a photograph of her on the front of the Tallahassee Democrat with her family. Well, maybe we'll talk a bit more later about the mental health. I honestly believe that this is something that we are going to face more and more. We are genuinely. This pandemic is not even close to over. I mean, arguably, it got worse about 2 weeks ago, and this is it now. This is like blowout time. And everybody is going to get this and recover. And then, of course, that will help the concept of herd immunity. But I don't know the science. I was asking about this yesterday, and maybe we can look into it today. What is the science of everyone getting Omicron? What is that going to result in? And how is it going to affect people's mental health? Because, of course, the government has just changed. The federal government has just changed the quarantine period from 10 days down to 5 days. So, here we are in this brave new world where suddenly it's okay to go out with coronavirus after 5 days. They didn't do that for your mental health. They did that for the economy. So mental health is going to have a knock-on effect. There'll be a catch-up period with mental health. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Let's stay in Florida, though, with our newspapers. We're going to go to the Daily Sun. Oh, this is from the Villages. Carla, do you know about the Villages? Do you know what it is? It's basically the largest retirement home in the US. But it's not just a house. It is a whole district of where people go to die, basically. And it's called the Villages. And you see, the newspaper of Florida's friendliest hometown, they call it. And the marketing of the Villages makes you think that you're basically going to a holiday destination. It's vast. Golf courses, and everything. They've got everything there. So Carla's basically saying that the Villages Daily Sun, she didn't realize it was a retirement home newspaper, but that's not going to stop us from reviewing it because I think it's brilliant. And there probably are, 500,000 retirees living there. Probably more, actually. It'd be interesting to know. But so the year of grand openings is the headline. Because, of course, this newspaper is a bit of a promotional pamphlet for living in the villages, isn't it? The Villages, where white people are welcome. That should be their slogan. I would like to know the kind of ethnic breakdown of the Villages. That would be very interesting. Because I watched their promotional video the other day. It was on TV. I didn't see any brown or black faces in the commercial. It'd be very interesting to find out the racial demographic of the Villages. We're getting into some detail here, but it's in Florida. They'll be like, oh yes, there was one black person living here, but they moved to another place. I would love them to prove me wrong. Maybe we'll look it up and we'll find out and see. I would love, because arguably it should be like 47%. If it's reflecting society, America, it should be 47% non-white. I guarantee it, there'll be like 4 people. I hope not, but I just have a feeling, Anyway, they're talking about the grand openings. January, the first neighborhood retail plaza in the community south of State Road 44. In March, the Water Lily Bridge across Florida's Turnpike opened, providing Villages residents full connectivity via golf carts to amenities and services throughout the community north to south. In May, Farm Shed American Diner became the newest dining option at Spanish Springs Town Square. I would love to go and retire there. Carla, maybe you'll meet me there. Maybe we'll go and live out our elderly days. I'll meet you there when we're both 85. I'll be 85. You'll be like 72. But maybe we should just do the show from there in our old age. Carla and I have never actually met. This is the interesting thing. We've been working together for a couple of years, and more than a couple of years, actually. Maybe 3 years. Never met. Let's keep it that way. So anyway, the Villages newspaper, the Daily Sun, has got all of these lovely positive promotional photographs on the front. And then in the corner, it says, new COVID case numbers eclipse previous records with variant. It's like all the good news over here and the bad news right there on the side. So, all before they were Villages. On page 5, Sue Ann Baker was one of the first 5 women sworn into the U.S. Secret Service. There you go. So they allow women in the Villages. I really hope people understand the irony of this whole conversation, because there's levels to this. There's levels. Okay, let's move on. Let's find another newspaper because I'm done with the villages now. I'm done. They've had enough promotional, airtime from us. Oh, we're going to Georgia now. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution. I love the slogans of these newspapers. It's worth knowing what's really going on. Soaring cases challenge state is the headline. As infections have soared into their highest point in the pandemic, the state is preparing to spend $100 million to hire contract hospital workers and will deploy about 200 Georgia National Guard troops to beleaguered hospitals and coronavirus testing centers. I took my daughter yesterday to get her second COVID shot. I don't know if you remember me saying, but her first COVID shot was a disaster. It's a disaster. Because I thought in my infinite parental wisdom it would be a good idea for me to get a flu shot at the same time so she could see me getting it. What I failed to take into account was that the flu shot needle for an adult is huge. And the needle for the coronavirus for the kids is tiny. And so she sees this person coming towards me with this huge needle and shoving it in my arm, and it freaked her out. So that was very difficult, getting her to get her first shot. I ended up having to hold her down after she'd run out of the office, and I had to chase her around. This time, piece of cake. She actually was looking forward to it. Can I get my shot now, Daddy? Unbelievable. Didn't feel a thing. Had this lovely guy, really nice. He put a plaster first on her stuffed animal, on her, what do they call it in America? We don't use this phrase in England. They call it a plush toy. Yeah, we don't say that in England, but they refer to these things as plush toys. Plush. Rhymes with flush. So the guy was very good, and he did, because she didn't wriggle, unlike the first time. When you wriggle, then obviously you're going to feel it. But she was still, and he put it in so beautifully. I watched him. The guy was like an inoculation master. Lovely. So that was great. Very happy about that. And I think it takes like a week for the kids to get, their full efficacy from the Pfizer vaccine. She's 6, and now she's effectively fully vaccinated. Kind of amazing, isn't it? So, what else do we have here? Oh, what the state is doing in Atlanta. Responding to the surge of COVID-19 infections, Governor Brian Kemp on Wednesday outlined the new steps to help overloaded hospitals and testing centers. 200 Guard members will be deployed, $100 million in federal pandemic rescue funds, more testing capacity planned. Yeah, you see, the biggest problem now is the home tests, isn't it? Because people weren't really home testing with Delta because they just got so sick. And with Omicron, it's like it's everywhere. So the demand is just through the roof. It's insane. I mean, I've been stockpiling tests, and I'm not afraid to admit it because I have a lot of people to test. But I think I've got like 6 boxes. 6 boxes of 2. I've got 12 tests. And I had to pay about $200 for those. It's crazy, isn't it? That we're having to pay in a pandemic. And, Biden claimed that we would be able to get a refund if we kept the receipt for these things from our insurance company. How's that going to work? Exactly. You ever been refunded by the insurance company? No, that doesn't work. They want a code for the provider. What's the provider code, they'll say. Crazy. Also on the front of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, parents weigh risks as schools reopen amid Omicron surge. It says, as Metro Atlanta schools prepare to reopen next week, Jocelyn Morgan is among many parents watching warily. She knows about the explosion of COVID-19 cases over the holiday break, sparked by the highly contagious Omicron variant. Morgan wonders if she should wait a few extra days before returning her daughter to her Atlanta kindergarten. She plans to give her an at-home coronavirus test before sending her back. Yeah. Well, all of the schools here certainly are asking for COVID tests before the kids go back to school. Absolutely. They have to be done within 24 hours of returning to school. Because, well, I'm quite right. I kind of wish the schools would have the tests there, though, and so that we don't have to eat into my small stash of tests. But you just can't get them. You can't get the tests. They're sold out. Literally sold out. Like, you cannot get tests now here in LA. I don't know how it is across the rest of the country. I mean, I know it's pretty bad. I've been seeing on Twitter people posting photos of pharmacies with signs up saying, sorry, COVID tests sold out. Yesterday, Biden did announce that he's just inked a deal for $137 million to pay for a facility to be built that makes the little fabric strip that shows whether you're positive or negative. You know that little fabric strip that has the line appear on it? Apparently that's the thing that's difficult to get. So, the cardboard is easy, the nose swab is easy, the saline solution is easy, the hard bit is the strip. So he did a deal with Merck, and he's basically paying for this factory to make like 100 million strips a month. In addition to what they already make, But how long is that going to take to get that factory up and running? We needed them now. Yeah. I mean, but the thing is, coronavirus has been raging for over 2 years, right? Since November 2019. That's why it's called COVID-19, because that's when it was discovered. And here we are, 2 presidents later. Forget the last president, because he was telling us to drink bleach. But this guy, he didn't just have like the whole year that he's been president. He had the whole 4 years he watched the other guy pretend to be the president, right? So he could have made his plans during that period. Certainly the last year that he decided to run for office. Well, actually, that's not true. He decided to run for office the day that Trump said that there were fine people on both sides in Charlottesville, and that was in like September 2017. Well, Bernie Sanders advocates for universal health care, so he basically wants everybody to have free health care paid for by the state, through taxes, which is a great idea, but people can't get their heads around it. And where Sanders went wrong is he made it sound like that would be the only health care available. He didn't say you can stay with your private provider if you want to and carry on paying what you're paying now. He didn't say that. He just talked about universal health care. So, of course, people associate that with socialism, which is a little bit of an outdated description, and then communism. The Americans, they don't want to pay for other people to get free healthcare if they're paying for their own healthcare privately. They can't get their heads around that, and I get it. So, the way you present these things, the way you market these things, that's kind of what's essential. I think my new microphone has come into its own today, by the way. I don't know if you've noticed, but it just feels like it's really like doing its job today. There's a little setting on here, there's a little switch that I flicked on here to make it sound even more like rich. It's called the rich switch. Also on the front of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, surprise medical bills law kicks in January 1st. This is a new federal law that takes effect for Georgia patients with health insurance might finally stop getting many types of surprise medical bills. All sides abhor surprise medical bills that happen when a properly insured patient finds out too late that a member of their care team was not in their insurance plan's network. Well, in such cases, the patient can be stuck in the middle and stuck with the bill. If the insurance company refuses to pay the price set by the doctor or hospital, the provider bills the patient instead. But last year, Congress took a big step to stop the practice, passing the No Surprises Act. Only in America would they come up with a bill called the No Surprises Act. It sounds like something that Burger King would do as a kind of Christmas promotion. Very funny. It adds to protections the Georgia legislature already enacted last year, which addressed some but not all of the problems. Well, that's interesting. I actually have a medical bill that I need to contest. It claims to be a COVID test for my daughter. And they've sent a bill for like $140, and I didn't know what it was. A COVID test is supposed to be free. Didn't recognize it. Just forgot to get round to it. And now they've sent a debt collector letters. So I need to deal with that today. That's the problem in this country, you know? I mean, I had a baby here and they sent a bill for about $120,000. And what they only started doing recently is on the top, they'd now write, "This is not a bill." But they never wrote that before. So they'd send it to you and you'd panic because they'd come and you get hundreds of them. 12 grand, 6 grand, 11 grand, all these different bills. And you'd be like, what is all this? Don't send me any bills. Unbelievable. Anyway, so the surprise medical bills law is something to look forward to, I guess. Getting COVID-19 tests requires plenty of patience. This is a story about a holiday family gathering at Len and Lynn Sinclair's Midtown house turned into a Christmas fiasco when one guest later tested positive. The vaccinated and boosted pair waited 3 days and then joined what seemed like the rest of Metro Atlanta on the hunt for a test. After 2 false starts, they got tested Tuesday by workers at the Fulton County site at Boulevard and Highland Avenue after about 45 minutes. Yeah, I mean, I've seen this in Florida, actually. This is Atlanta, but I've seen video of Florida of these snaking lines for drive-through testing. And people are lining up for miles. It's just nuts. And this goes back to what I was saying about Biden. Like, why didn't Biden get home testing sorted out in his first week? And not him specifically, but the coronavirus task force, whoever they were. I'll be honest, I don't know who is the new head of the CDC. Who is it? Because they're terrible. The advice they're giving now is just terrible. It's not Fauci. Don't confuse this with Fauci. Fauci is a government advisor. He's the expert on the virus. He doesn't write public policy. He's an advisor to the president, advisor to the various groups. No, I think Robert Redfield was the old CDC head. I think there's a new guy since Robert Redfield. Robert Redfield was put in by Trump, and Redfield was useless. You know, he was useless. I mean, he was a sweet old guy, but he didn't have the gumption to stand up to Trump and say, no, this is the way it needs to be. But I feel like they replaced him with somebody. We'll find out who it was. Okay, let's move on with the newspapers. The Star advertiser in Honolulu. Yes, we fly to Hawaii, the state that some people don't realize is America. Naming no names. Personal responsibility over new restrictions. It says Honolulu Mayor Rick Blangiardi asks residents to use good judgment amid surge. Yes, the mayor on Wednesday stopped short of imposing new COVID-19 restrictions before the New Year's holiday, but asked residents and businesses to voluntarily practice what he termed a soft lockdown. He said it's that sense of personal responsibility with people controlling and using good judgment which is really important at this point in time, because everybody recognizes the fact that we are breaking records on cases, he said during a news conference. Blangiardi said he did not want to impose mandatory restrictions on establishments, but asked nightclubs and other venues to voluntarily suspend dancing. So, no more dancing. Well, enough of your COVID dance. Enough of the... Because, Honolulu dancing involves, like, grass skirts and flower necklaces and things. And it's a very contagious illness now. With all the flappage of the grass, And it's a greeting, isn't it? You step off the plane in Honolulu and they will literally, like, throw these over your head, laced with coronavirus. I really hope people understand the level of irony today. Please take much of this with a pinch of salt. My cough button is working very well, by the way. The cough button that was plugged in yesterday. You see? It works. I'm very proud of that. That's a really nice piece of equipment. Thank you, my mum, for buying that for my Christmas present. What a lovely thing to do. In return, I got her tickets for Stevie Wonder. So, is that a fair swap? It was a super spreader event, apparently. What's that song? Oh, Superstition. Wouldn't it be funny if Stevie Wonder sung Superstition, but re-sung it as Super Spreader at a Stevie Wonder concert? It's a super spreader. The writing's on the wall. It kind of works, doesn't it? Kind of works. Something tragic about that, really. 12,000 people in a room, all catching coronavirus, and Stevie Wonder singing, "It's a super spreader." Navy says its water could be cleaned by end of January on the Star Advertiser. This is again from Honolulu. Top Navy officials told state lawmakers on Wednesday they should be finished flushing their water distribution system by the end of January, and that some military families who were displaced by petroleum contamination in their tap water could begin moving home as soon as late next week. I mean, how did that even happen? Petroleum contaminating drinking water. How? I'll tell you how. I'll tell you how these things happen in America. It's because they drill for oil and they drill for fuel, fossil fuel, and they do it, or they frack, and they do it nearby water services, and they cross-pollinate. That's how. And the greed of these fossil fuel companies prevents them from digging elsewhere, or not even digging at all. It says the new timeline is a significant expansion from the Navy's assessment in early December that it could clean up its water system, which was contaminated with jet fuel in late November. In just a couple of weeks, more than 4,000 military families have moved out of their homes because of the contamination, with many living out of hotel rooms in Waikiki. So, there we go. That's the Honolulu paper. Let's move on, finally. Is it finally? No, we've got a couple more. Idaho next. This is the Lewiston Tribune for Idaho. And the headline is, "The best way to start the new year. The polar bear plunge is back after last year's cancellation." Well, I got news for you. It's probably been cancelled again. This paper was printed probably 10 hours ago. It's probably been cancelled already. It says the annual first swim is returning on Saturday after taking last New Year's Day off because of COVID-19 restrictions. To date, there are no restrictions this year. The polar bear plunge is back. Come one, come all to get refreshed in the new year. This person's organised the event for more than 20 years. She and other so-called polar bears are believers in the cleansing and rejuvenating qualities of cold water. Carla, you like a cold water plunge, don't you? You're a freshwater swimmer. Hampstead ponds and the like. I mean, some people are into that. I think it must be your Irish heritage, because my heritage says that I just like a really hot bath in a very nice hotel. That's where it's at for me. Nice big tub, and I don't like to stay in it for very long. It's just too much. 5 minutes, plenty. I can just about listen to like one Elton John song. Oh, there was some interesting news about Elton John and the Princess Diana Memorial Funeral concert the other day. Did you hear about this? It's been revealed that, he sung Candle in the Wind and he rewrote it. He rewrote the words. So instead of saying, it was Goodbye Norma Jean is the lyric, right? And he wrote it to say Goodbye England's Rose. But he was going to be playing your song. And it was actually the dean of the church where they had the funeral that encouraged him to, rewrite the lyrics and be a little bit more specific and poignant. This is a story that came out today. There was big revelation as to the original plans for Princess Diana's funeral service. I mean, why this would come out now, I have no idea. It's just, one of those things. Maybe Prince Andrew put that story out to distract from the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. Notice that Prince Andrew didn't even get a mention in the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. Not a mention. Flew on his jet, stayed in his house, enjoyed massages. No mention in the trial. This is the protection of royalty. So, yes, regarding the polar bear plunge, my advice would be, don't do it. I think the planning for this was basically before Omicron ravaged America. Not a good idea. Also on the front of the Lewiston Tribune this morning, new virus cases in US reach highest levels on record. It says number per day has more than doubled over the past 2 weeks. Maxwell convicted in Epstein's sex abuse case. Verdict caps months-long trial after jurors deliberated for 5 days. It was interesting, there was some coverage saying that every day after the case, when she was led away, she would hug her lawyers. She was quite affectionate with her lawyers. And yesterday, the day that she got convicted, she did not hug her lawyers. And I thought that was kind of interesting. If you're kind of interested in, the body language and the messages that these things put out, that she didn't embrace her lawyers. It's kind of weird that she did. If you're in a kind of sex abuse scandal, why would you want to be physical with anybody publicly? Why would you want to hug your lawyers at all? Why would you want to show any signs of a kind of physical connection or relationship? I mean, maybe she did it precisely for that reason, because she was trying to be stoic and stalwart and trying to make a point that, she's just a regular person who hugs lawyers. I've never hugged a lawyer. Where there's a will, there's a lawyer. Yeah, she was pretending to be normal. That's it. She was pretending to be normal, except on the day she was convicted of not being normal, and then she didn't hug her lawyers. It's very interesting to me. Very interesting. She's, I'd be very interested to know what's going to happen to her, because they haven't sentenced her yet. They reckon that each of these 5 convictions are each worth between 10 and 40 years each. So potentially, she's 60 now. She was actually 60 on Christmas Day. So she's going to be behind bars for the rest of her life, for certain. But they said that about Jeffrey Epstein, and then he suddenly was suicided. You know that phrase? He was suicided. Poor Jeffrey Epstein. He got suicided. Okay, what's next? Let's move on. That was the Lewiston Tribune in Honolulu. In Idaho. Let's see what's next. Oh, we're going to go to the Moscow Pullman Daily News from Idaho. Oh, Rochelle Walensky. That's the name of the head of the CDC. That's right. Yeah, they were done with the other guy. I mean, Rochelle's not a bad person. You know, I've watched her give interviews, and she's a very smart person, but I just think that PR and marketing is probably not her strong point. You know? You really have to have an understanding of the mood of the nation and what the American people can tolerate if you're going to change guidelines. And it does seem like 10 days to 5 days was turning on a dime. In England, we say sixpence. I just translated that to dime because I speak both languages now. Turn on a sixpence. It was a very small coin pre-decimalization. I'm loving the detail. Carla, I hope you're appreciating the detail here. It's a level of insanity connected to this level of detail. Incidentally, we have a growing list of shows here on Backchannel, including Haley and Allison Live, waking you up in the morning with lots of laughs and their one-star cinema review, or Live Every Day with Liv Harrison. She's live from Texas, celebrating the little things in life with plenty of brandy. And also the charming and funny Hal Rudnick. He's here straight after me in an hour's time with his show called Your Pal Hal. Something to look forward to. Okay, the Moscow Pullman Daily News now, out of Idaho. Library's Jefferson Painting draws criticism. Neal Public Library Board will discuss concerns in meeting next week. This is not more. Is this more cancellation? Let's have a look. It says the Neal Public Library Board of Trustees in Pullman will spend a portion of their meeting next week discussing a painting of Thomas Jefferson in the library that has drawn criticism from community members. The painting of the third US president is part of the library's collection of art pieces local artists gave to the library in 1980, said library director Joanna Bailey. She said there are dozens of art pieces from this collection that are displayed in rotation on a regular basis. The Jefferson painting, created by Dan Peel, hangs at the north entrance of the library. 4 people sent emails to the library earlier this month expressing concerns about the painting. What's up with the painting? Is he naked or something? What's the hook? It says 3 of those emails asked staff to relocate or remove the painting. I realize it was gifted by a local artist, but I feel that many library users may be offended by Jefferson's long-time stance on slavery. Well, that is a very good point. Even though he felt conflicted. And his sexual relationship with at least one of his slaves, essentially an abuse of power over women and others, wrote Ginny Hauser in an email. Well, you see, it is a form of cancellation, but by the sounds of it, it's for the right reasons. The thing is, if you remove a painting because somebody was, in this case, a former president was a slave owner, you are denying your history. And it's almost like we need to see these people. We need to recognize their mistakes. We need to analyze them and discuss their mistakes and see how history has changed. If you remove a guy because of his behavior, then you're effectively whitewashing the history. And that is just as bad. So, sorry, Pamela Awana Lee. I don't agree. I mean, what you could do is you could add a plaque underneath that says slave owner and put it under his name. You could effectively highlight his failure. If you want to educate. She said, it offends me that our community library displays the portrait of Jefferson as if he was an exemplary historical person. Does our library condone slaveholding? Bailey said part of Tuesday's meeting will be spent on discussing Pullman's public art policies and its art acquisition policy to determine what course of action the board can take. It's interesting, isn't it? But, it's a bit like these books that, because, we're living in a fascist country now because they're trying to ban and burn books effectively. Burning the book is a metaphor for what's happening. But I was reading yesterday about a whole swathe of books in one state, and they're saying if these books exist in the school library, then the librarian... These are books about LGBT rights and books about trans rights and stuff. They're saying that the librarian will be fired and fined $10,000. That's how they choose to deal with this. The librarian. Like there's one librarian. That's how they're choosing to police this now. I do not want my children seeing a book on trans rights. What are you worried? Are you worried that your child might decide to become trans? Is that what you're worried about? Might be like, oh, this is a good book. I'm going to try this trans stuff. Trust me, if your child is trans, they'll know. And maybe that book might help them. But if they're not trans, they'll also know that book is not for them. That's how it works. Because we don't choose these things. They are decided for us. I mean, it's just beggars belief. Carla, should we try the US news update? Because it's 10 o'clock and, it's that kind of time. Halfway through the show where we take a momentary pause to bring you a podcast that I host every day. It's a short one, just a couple of minutes long. It's called the US News Update. And you can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from. So here it is. It's Thursday, December 30. From the Volley Network, this is your daily US News Update. I'm Anthony Davis. More than a year after the vaccine was rolled out, new cases of COVID-19 in the US have soared to their highest level on record at over 265,000 per day on average, a surge driven largely by the highly contagious Omicron variant. New cases per day have more than doubled over the past 2 weeks. The fast-spreading mutant version of the virus has cast a pall over Christmas and New Year, forcing communities to scale back or call off their festivities just weeks after it seemed as if Americans were about to enjoy an almost normal holiday season. Dr. Anthony Fauci said on Wednesday there was no need to cancel small home gatherings amongst vaccinated and boosted family and friends. While hospitalizations sometimes lag behind cases, the hospital figures may reflect both the protection conferred by the vaccine and the possibility that Omicron is not making people as sick as previous versions. COVID-19 deaths in the US have climbed over the past 2 weeks from an average of 1,200 per day to around 1,500. CDC data already suggests the unvaccinated are hospitalized at much higher rates than those who have been inoculated, even if the effectiveness of the shots decreases over time. The WHO reported that new COVID-19 cases worldwide increased 11% last week from the week before, with nearly 4.99 million recorded. But the UN Health Agency also noted a decline in cases in South Africa, where Omicron was first detected just over a month ago. Your daily US news update is part of the Volley Network. To hear my live daily morning show, ask your Amazon Echo device to open Backchannel. There it is, and there it was. That's the US News Update, which you can subscribe to wherever you get your podcasts. Welcome to Backchannel. It's 3 minutes after 10 on the West Coast, 3 minutes after 1 Eastern, and thank you for spending your morning with us. If you would like to join in the show, then you can chat via backchannel.tv. Abby's joined us from Florida. Paul is here. Stacey is here. So as you join in, feel free to chat back, or backchannel with us. You can also watch on YouTube, which Jessica is doing, full screen in her living room. So what a wonderful way to start your Thursday. It's the 30th. It's the penultimate day of 2021. I cannot wait for this year to be over. Do you feel like that? Are you just like, this year has just been a disaster? It's been a disaster. So anyway, here we are. A brave new world, a brand new year, and more coronavirus than anybody could ever imagine. It's out of control. Anyway, my point is that we should try not to let it we should try not to kind of take it personally. It's not your fault. Like if you get Omicron, I was saying this to somebody last night, if you get Omicron, and here in Los Angeles County, there's 20,000 people getting it every day. If you get Omicron, it's not your fault. It is so highly transmissible. It is, you literally needed to be sneezed on with Delta. This thing, it's just airborne. It's just, if you go out, there's a good chance you'll get it. You go in the supermarket and get it even with a mask on. They're now saying that you need to be wearing N95 masks. This is like the new advice, is that, those surgical masks, no good. Gaps, gaps. N95. And so those are going to sell out now as well. It's like relentless decision to make about, what to stockpile. I bought one of those oximeters, the thing that goes on your finger that shows your blood oxygen level. They're about $20. Unless you buy them in the pharmacy. If you buy them online, about $20. In the pharmacy, about $40. But your blood oxygen level needs to be around 100%. And if it drops down, if it goes like below 97, 96, 95, then that's obviously the amount of oxygen in your blood is reducing. And if it gets as low as like 65 or 70, then you want to get yourself to hospital. But it's a very good way of, because the thing is, when you're ill, I've had pneumonia a few times. Like if you're ill with something respiratory, it affects your brain because your blood oxygen is reduced. And if you live alone, as I did, you don't have the support of another person to say, you don't look well, we're going to hospital. And this is why people die at home, is because they don't have any way of measuring their illness. And so the little $20 blood oxygen level meter, the oximeter, is a very good thing to have at home, because you don't have to be a clinician to click it on your finger and just see whether you've got 100% or less. It's worth getting one, especially for respiratory illnesses. It's very good advice. And also a thermometer. I have one of those electronic thermometers. So, between your temperature and the blood oximeter, you could, use the data to decide how ill you are, in addition to how you feel. Because having been ill, I remember when I had pneumonia, I woke up in the middle of the night and I could not understand what was wrong with me. Like I was dazed and confused. And the reason I didn't call an ambulance is because I had low blood oxygen. I wasn't thinking straight. And so my theory is that if you live alone, sometimes this equipment will help you, but the problem is you'll probably forget to even do it because you'll be so confused. Good things to have at home. Thermometer, electronic thermometer, like $15. Blood oxygen oximeter, $20. Definitely worth having. Because, these days, you go all the way to the clinic or the urgent care or the ER. What's the first thing they do? Take your temperature, check your blood oxygen level, and they also do your blood pressure. I also have a blood pressure machine at home. So I'm obviously a bit of a hypochondriac. Well, it's important. And my blood pressure monitor is Bluetooth, and it talks to my health app on my phone, which goes to my doctor's office. So my doctor's office is seeing my daily stats when I remember to do it. Okay, let's see what else we have here for you. There's so much going on this morning. We're going to look at the Chicago Tribune now. They lead with CPS extends deadline to drop off testing kits. Oh my goodness. This is a pile of tests left by a FedEx drop box. Oh my goodness, this is one of the craziest pictures I have ever seen. These are home tests. This is a girl, Jessica Martinez, drops off her son's at-home COVID-19 test with a pile of other tests from CPS students at a FedEx drop-off box in West Elston on Tuesday. CPS extended the return deadline to Thursday and expanded drop-off sites. I mean, there must be 200 tests piled up in envelopes on top of the FedEx. I mean, why aren't FedEx collecting like 2 or 3 times a day in this neighborhood? Why are FedEx? Probably because they haven't got the drivers, because they've all got COVID. That's why. So Chicago Public Schools said it has extended the deadline to Thursday for parents to return the district's at-home COVID-19 test kits after photos circulated online of Tuesday of drop boxes overflowing with packages. They said, "We're encouraged by the number of families who have submitted tests so far. We're working with all partners to ensure a timely pickup of test kits at FedEx and libraries." They noted the district had added a drop-off location at the Garfield Ridge branch of the Chicago Public Library and will accept completed test kits at some libraries until 5 p.m. Well, that's good to know, isn't it? Our school has just said test at home and let us know the result. You know, I mean, trust. Little trust. Riders have been slow to return to CTA. This is riders yet fully to return to trains and buses. Isn't it interesting that in America you call them riders? We don't say that in England. That's interesting. Riders, we would refer to a motorbike or a bicycle. But we don't say ride the train. We say take the train. Or ride the bus. We don't say ride the bus. We say take the bus. The driver drives the bus, and the passengers take the bus. But maybe in American, take the bus might mean steal the bus. Who steals the bus? Riders have yet to fully return to trains and buses nearly 2 years since the crush of rush hour passengers abruptly disappeared. When will they come back? That's the billion-dollar question, not even a million-dollar question, said P.S. Shriraj, director of the Urban Transportation Center at the University of Illinois at Chicago. It will likely be tied to when and how employees who've been working remotely return to their offices, transportation agencies and experts say. I mean, this is something that's very interesting for these big infrastructure projects, isn't it, if you think about it? And in England, they've been toiling with, like, putting a high-speed rail train from the north to south, south to north for years. But, you know, now they've worked out that it's perfectly possible to work remotely, that we can do Zoom video conferencing, that we do not need to meet in meetings. Do you really need to spend £100 billion on a high-speed rail network? It's like they are planning for the Industrial Revolution. It's 2012, for goodness sake. Times have changed. And this is my point. I mean, I used to argue with this high-speed rail. And we have the same here in California. You know, they're trying to build a high-speed rail that joins San Francisco with Los Angeles because a lot of people fly and they want to reduce people flying. So they're going to put a high-speed rail train in. But my advice about the UK train was take the existing train, because the new train is only going to be 20 minutes faster. Take the existing train and put really good high-speed Wi-Fi free on board so that anybody on board can work, like be productive. So while you're sitting on the train, okay, it takes the same time as it takes now, but you've got this high-speed Wi-Fi that's free and you can be productive. Because their argument was it'll be more productive if people get to Liverpool quicker, or Manchester faster, or Birmingham in a snap. Birmingham only looks nice in your rearview mirror. Incidentally, Birmingham, Alabama was named after Birmingham, England. Did you know that? It's true. So, but no, they're sticking with the train plan. And it just seems that with coronavirus, it just seems like the wrong thing to do. I actually don't think this pandemic is really going to end. You know, I just think it's just going to keep changing and we're just going to keep adapting. And this is it now. And I feel mostly sorry for my children because, you know, I've spent 45 years like not wearing a mask and a couple of years wearing a mask. And my children, my daughter's been alive for 6 years, and for more than 2 of those years, she's been wearing a mask. And I'm not against masks, I'm saying that that's her childhood. You know, we'll look back at photos of her childhood, and she'll be masked. Oh, do you remember the great pandemic of 2019, 2020, 21, 2022, and 2023? Do you remember those essential years of your childhood? So I really feel like I'm not being pessimistic about it, but I just recognize that there's really little chance of this going away because of the society that we live in now, where we fly around the world. You know, like if Omicron came out of South Africa, it's questionable whether it did or not. It could have come out of Belgium or something. But if it truly came out of South Africa, we fly from South Africa all over the world, dozens of times a day. And so that's the problem, isn't it? We're living in a global society now. Your virus is my virus. Hello, Rodney from Kansas. Paul's joined us from Ireland. Dennis is here as well, and Abby in Florida. Thank you for joining Backchannel on this Thursday morning. It's 10:15, the 30th of December, or it might be 1:15, depending on where you're living. But here on the West Coast in California, 10:15 Thursday morning, pouring with rain here, as we've had this insane storm. You know, climate change is one of those things, isn't it? Climate change is one of those things where you're kind of, you know, you're living in this, how would I describe it? We're living in this society where, you know, you move to Florida or you move to California because you want sunshine, and now what you get is rain, like incessant rain. And this is climate changing. Climate change doesn't mean that the whole planet's heating up all the time and weather gets hot, because climate change is not weather. It's the temperature of the planet. And the effect of that causes extreme weather events. And the rain we've had here in California in the last few days, and we had it last week as well, is an extreme weather event. And where I live, the city can't handle it. I mean, it's bin day today, so all the trash cans are outside, and they're all knocked over. It's like a trash can zombie apocalypse, with trash cans like rolling down hills and spewing all of their contents. The place is a mess. Trees down, power lines down. I mean, that's just from 2 days of rain. It's how it is here. It's just not designed for it. Like some countries can't handle the hot weather. You know, when I lived in London and it was a heat wave for 2 or 3 days, everything ground to a standstill. The buses were overheating, the trains wouldn't run. Too hot. And you can't get a roofer in Los Angeles at the moment. The roofers are all inundated because, of course, they build roofs here that leak because it never rains until it rains. We're going to Danville, Illinois now to take a look at the commercial news. Disappointing and concerning is the headline. Steep population loss means fewer residents will shoulder greater burden. According to U.S. Census data, Danville's population decreased from 33,000 in 2010 to 29,000. What? 1,000 less people in Danville? Well, Danville. The mayor is furious. His name's Ricky Williams Jr. He said he didn't expect the final numbers to be quite as large of a decrease as that. He said, I was surprised that there were so many, Williams said about lost residents. He thought the city might have lost maybe 1,000 to 1,500 people in the last decade, not 4,000. 4,000 across the whole of the county. He said, that's disappointing, a little bit concerning. My goal is to improve all of the things that the city of Danville controls, such that people will have an amazing quality of life here, and that they will not only want to stay, but we would draw people in from other places. But of course, the problem is that, you know, financially, Danville and the county will be worse off because the census denotes what certain states and counties are given from the federal government. Williams said that a lot has not been made clear yet as to all the local impacts with the city's population decrease. Interesting. New COVID-19 cases soar to highest level on record. I mean, this is pretty much the same story on every newspaper. It is the highest level on record. Amazing. If you want to get in touch, then just wake up your device, then say, and then your message. If you would like to take a look at us on YouTube, you can do that, and you can message via the app. It's a website, backchannel.tv. But you could add it to your home screen if you want. Just keep it there and just summon it up at any time and message us, Rodney, Paul, Dennis, Abby, Eric, Jagat, Michael, Stacey, Paolo, Jessica, all part of Backchannel this morning. Thank you very much for spending your morning with us. It's 10:20 here on the West Coast. Okay, let's move into some of our bigger stories. I want to talk about Joe Biden and Vladimir Putin. You remember him? That kid from Russia? Yeah. Well, it's all escalating, as it always does, There's always something. I do worry that, people like Putin and even Xi Jinping, these people are very savvy. Very savvy. They have good poker face. Xi Jinping's poker face is next level. It says US President Joe Biden is set to hold talks with Vladimir Putin for the second time this month. I think he's actually doing it tonight. They're going to discuss forthcoming security talks between the countries and the situation in Europe. Russia, which has built up forces on the border with Ukraine, denies planning to invade the country. Well, if Russia's denying it, that means they're going to do it. That's basically how it works with Russia. Like, if they say black, you say white. That's just the way it's going to be. It says its troops are there for exercises. And it's entitled to move its troops freely on its own soil. Well, of course, because it's claiming that Ukraine is part of Russia. So it's referring to Russia, to Ukraine as its own soil. Or maybe the border. And that's fair enough. Hours before the call, Mr. Putin told Mr. Biden in a holiday message he was convinced the pair could work together based on mutual respect and consideration of each other's national interests. His spokesman, Dmitry Peskov, said Moscow was in the mood for a conversation. That's nice. Rather that than in the mood for a land war. It's just such a mess, isn't it? What a mess. The US consulted European leaders ahead of the call to coordinate a common response to the Ukraine issue. Ukrainian security officials say more than 100,000 Russian troops have been sent close to their shared border, and the US has threatened Mr. Putin with sanctions like none he's ever seen if Ukraine comes under attack. Mr. Biden will offer his Russian counterpart a diplomatic path, but remains gravely concerned by the Russian troop buildup on the border. Mr. Biden is expected to tell Mr. Putin that the US is prepared to respond if Russia advances with a further invasion of Ukraine. Antony Blinken spoke to the Ukrainian President, Volodymyr Zelensky, on Wednesday. Mr. Blinken has reiterated the United States' unwavering support for Ukraine's independence, sovereignty, and territorial integrity in the face of Russia's military buildup on Ukraine's borders. So there it is. That's kind of how it's looking. I mean, look, this goes back decades, doesn't it? This fight, to the fall of the Soviet Union. And I really feel like, if I was to make a prediction, I would say that I would love there to be a diplomatic solution to this, as would Biden and probably half the planet. But I just think that Putin is kind of in the mood for a little light aggression. I just feel like that's the kind of guy he is. And I don't think he respects Ukraine. He wants it to be part of Russia, but I don't think he has much respect for it. It wouldn't surprise me if he, advances something, and then there is a swift military incident, and then it stops. That's my prediction. There'll be a swift something. There'll be a tank comes in, then a drone comes over the top, tank gets blown up, game over. It's not going to be nuclear warfare, don't worry. He doesn't care that much. But I do think that Putin is like in the mood for a fight because it's been a while. And also, there's been all this criticism of him recently, and he's got an ego. The guy's got an ego. He posts photographs of himself stripped to the waist sitting on a horse and thinks that people want to see a 60-year-old man in the altogether. It's another world. Get off your high horse, Mr. Putin. I'm enjoying this tune today, Carla. This is nice. I feel like I'm in a gay club in the 1990s. It's 10:24. This is Backchannel here on the West Coast. It's the 30th, or 10:25 now. It's the 30th of December, 2021. Very, very nearly 2022. Just a day and a half away. Something to look forward to. Okay, let's look at some of the history of of Ukraine and Russia and this relationship, and how far it goes back, of course, because I've got a timeline in front of me. Let me go to the beginning of this timeline and see where it starts. 2016. Biden talks Russia tensions with Ukrainian East European leaders. Here we go, 2016. Malaysia Airlines settles with family of Ukraine crash victims. Russia accuses Ukraine of terrorist attack in Crimea. Russia-Ukraine tensions rise over Crimea, August 15th, 2016. Ukraine and separatists agree to troop withdrawal, September 2016. Because the thing is, these things advance in in kind of micro moments. I mean, even the MH17 missile, do you remember the Malaysia Airlines flight MH17 and it got shot down by a missile, and Russia claimed it was a Ukrainian missile that shot it down, and Ukraine said it was Russia? Well, a Dutch-led investigation team found that the surface-to-air missile that downed Malaysia Airlines Flight 17 over Ukraine was transported from and returned to Russia on the same night. So they actually took this Russian ground-to-air missile system across the border to shoot the plane down and took it back again. 1st of December 2016, Ukrainian rebel leaders divided by leadership purge. Peace talks on Ukraine end without agreement. That was in early December as well. Four-way talks on ending a separatist conflict in eastern Ukraine finish without a breakthrough on November 29. The German Foreign Minister Frank-Walter Steinmeier said both Ukraine and Russia had hardened their positions, and there was no political agreement in sight on holding local elections. Interesting. US Treasury adds to Russia's sanctions for Crimea in early 2017. And then, oh yeah, that's right, President Trump's campaign manager accused of money laundering from the Ukrainian party. I mean, Trump's fingers are all over this. He actually destabilized this region with his behavior, phoning Volodymyr Zelensky and asking him to investigate Hunter Biden. Do you remember? I mean, it's not helpful. There was an explosion at the US Embassy in Kiev in June 2017. Ongoing conflict in Ukraine. Trump met with Ukrainian president in June 2017. Petro Poroshenko, and discuss US support for the resolution of the conflict in eastern Ukraine. He said, I'm good at making deals. Remember, I'll make a deal. He said, I'm a great deal maker. I'll make a deal. This is the thing that really annoyed me about Trump supporters. They were like, you got to run America like a business. Trump's a businessman. If you run it like a business, it'll make a profit and everybody will benefit. And I have two problems with that. One, trickle-down economics does not work. It's been proven that it's a false flag. And 2, a country is not a business. There's nothing business-like about a country, the way you run a country. There's the civic element to running a country doesn't bear any resemblance to running a business. They couldn't be further apart. My dad used to say this as well. He used to be convinced that you could run a country like a business, run a government like a business. He was a conservative. And it's just like, no, you don't spend less and think that that's how you're going to benefit. It just doesn't work like that. Something weird's happened to my thing over here. Hang on, let me just fix this. Some weird stuff happening with my screen. There we go. Germany and France urge a ceasefire in Ukraine. That happened in July 2017. That was after Trump failed to make a deal. And so then Germany and everybody else got involved. And then the US was considering sending arms to Ukraine. Pentagon and State Department propose arming Ukraine. US Special Envoy to Ukraine conflict to meet with Russian representative. That was August 2017. I mean, literally every single month there's a new incident. I mean, no wonder they're in the situation they're in now. It's beggars belief. And then, of course, in 2019, the new Ukrainian leader, Volodymyr Zelensky, he dissolved parliament, which was still dominated by the bloc of the former president, Petro Poroshenko, and he called for early elections. And remember, Volodymyr Zelensky was a comedian who impersonated Petro Poroshenko and ended up running for president as a joke and won. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. And then Russia started expanding their military build-up on Crimea with satellite imagery. This was in June 2019, showed that Russia had moved 5 anti-aircraft missile batteries, along with additional troops and other weapons, into Crimea. And then, I mean, look, it's very obvious to me that these are countries that are so swamped in corruption. I did 2 massive sneezes just then, and I pressed my cough button, and I couldn't find the sneeze button. I'm going to have to write on his sneeze as an option as well. That's so good. They were massive sneezes just then, probably corona sneezes. And you didn't hear a word. Press the button. It's right here in front of me. Brilliant. I'm so pleased with this button. It's life-changing for somebody like me. Got a lot of new equipment in here now. This is all going to change, by the way. This is all going to go grey, probably tomorrow. I've been saying it for a couple of weeks, haven't I? But it's all going to go grey. Maybe I'll do it later today. I might do it later today. And then Ukraine sought NATO membership to ward off Russia. That was in April this year. Excuse me. Hang on. And Ukraine said no contact between Zelensky and Putin. That was in April this year. NATO and the US voiced support for Ukraine in April this year. And then the EU warned the Russian build-up near the Ukraine could trigger a conflict, and then the Ukraine adopted military reservist law. I mean, this was all snowballing by this time. Snowballing. But my concern amongst all of this, because Volodymyr Zelensky is a pretty kind of balanced character. You know, I mean, the guy was a comedian. He was like an improviser and a stand-up and a writer and an entertainer. So he's actually quite amenable. But, Putin's not known for his sense of humor. His sense of compassion. I think that's really what you need in these situations, isn't it? I don't think he would see Ukrainians as being people worthy of protecting, necessarily. He just wants the land. He just wants the land. Excuse me. Okay, let's move on and take a little look here. What else do we have? Oh, yeah, we're going to move on to this Alaska story. This is very interesting. They've kind of... Oh, My Dealberry has just shown up from Alabama. Hello, My Dealberry. Welcome. Got Rodney in Kansas, Paul's in Ireland. I mean, this is turning out to be quite the international conference. I feel like I'm at the G8 summit. Wonderful. Yeah, I want to talk about Alaska because the coldest U.S. state has recorded its hottest ever December amid an unusual winter warm spell. This is not good. I mean, you know this is not good, but I'm telling you this is not good. Temperatures soared to a record 19.4 degrees centigrade on the island of Kodiak on Sunday, almost 7 degrees warmer than the state's previous high. But elsewhere in Alaska, temperatures have been plunging to record lows. In the southeastern town of Ketchikan, temperatures dropped minus 18 on the 25th of December, one of the coldest days in the town in the past century. The weather extremes have prompted warnings of an ice-mageddon from authorities as torrents of rain and snow have left ice as hard as cement coating the roads. Experts say warm air pouring in from Hawaii has made Alaska's air, usually cold and dry during December, more moist. And this has meant heavy rain and snow is often more likely in interior regions, away from the balmy coastal areas. I mean, it's happening here as well. You know, I said it earlier. You know, we have extreme heat in the summer, and unusual cold and wet periods in the winter. That's the extremes of climate change. That's what it does. Do you remember when Donald Trump used to talk about climate change and he didn't know what it was, and he used to call it clean air and clean water? Oh my goodness. Every time they'd say, "Oh, what are you doing about climate change?" He would say, "We have the cleanest air and the cleanest water." And I used to think, you don't even know what it is. And the tragedy of that scenario for 4 whole years, aside from coming out of the Paris Climate Accord, you know, they actually didn't come out of it because you had to give notice. And I think it was like 3 years notice. And so we were only out of it for about 4 months before Biden put us back in again. So it didn't really have a negative effect. But the point is that it's about, you know, setting a standard for the world. But what upset me was that no journalist called Trump on it. You know, when he said we have the cleanest air and the cleanest water, no journalist went, "That's not climate change." Like, no one shouted it out. Why not hold him to account? I mean, I would have liked for somebody in an interview, you know, like a proper sit-down interview on Face the Nation or one of these bigger things, to actually say, "What is climate change, President Trump?" And he would go, "It's the cleanest air and the cleanest water. And we're going to have the cleanest air and the cleanest water." He just repeats it over and over again, you know, a bit like when he went to the wildfire locations in California, and he said the reason there's fires here is because you don't sweep the floors. He actually used the phrase "sweep the floors" in a forest. Sweep the floors. There's a very famous video, it's worth looking up on YouTube, of Donald Trump in a small town called Paradise in Northern California. And he's with the former governor Jerry Brown and the current governor, Eric Garcetti. Mayor Garcetti. Not Garcetti, no. The other guy. I can't remember his name. Anyway, they're in the forest where there's been a fire, and Trump can't remember the name of Paradise, which is the name of this town. So you see him first talking about the fact that there's no floor cleaning going on, and this is why it caught fire, because the floors haven't been swept. He literally said this stuff out loud. And then he couldn't remember the name of Paradise, so guess what he replaced it with, out loud, 2 or 3 times? Pleasure. He called the town Pleasure. So somebody had obviously said to him, "We're in a place called Paradise," and he couldn't remember that, so he replaced it with pleasure, because I guess in his mind he connects being in paradise with receiving pleasure, as disgusting as that might sound. And I felt Gavin Newsom. And I felt very sorry for Jerry Brown and Gavin Newsom, because they stood there and neither of them corrected him, because, you know, he's the president. And even though they're Democrats, they weren't going to embarrass him, because they're professional, you know, respectful people. So they allowed him to say pleasure as the name of the town several times, and humored him as he said, "You need to sweep your floors." You know, when I look back, I look back on footage of some of the stuff that Trump came out with, all of the stuff that guy came out with regards to, you know, drinking the bleach, cleaning from the inside, looking up at the eclipse, just like being a total idiot. And I just think, I mean, we lived through this. I don't want us to forget what that was like. It was very stressful for me. I was nervous. You know, that guy had the nuclear codes. I was very nervous. So here we are now, dealing with Alaska, with its hottest ever December day. And we have to ask ourselves, you know, this is not a one-off incident. You know, this is going to happen. It's going to get worse. And if Alaska schmelts, which it is likely to schmelt, then you are going to end up with a rising sea level. You're going to end up with a whole population with nowhere to live. And you're basically going to see Alaska disappear. It's just going to vanish. The fiercest midwinter storm since 1937 struck the central city of Fairbanks over Christmas, dumping more than 10 inches of snow. So much snow fell on Sunday it caved in the roof of the only grocery shop in the town of Delta Junction, 95 miles southeast of Fairbanks. Mr. Thompson said the blasts of extreme warm and cold temperatures over the past 2 decades were a sign of climate change. When all the pieces come together in a warming world, we're going to get these unprecedented events. The cold is set to return. Temperatures in Fairbanks are forecast to drop below 29 degrees centigrade, but warm, soggy episodes are likely to be more common in the future, he predicted. He said 2021 really seems to be the year these extreme precipitation events have really come into the fore. I mean, how do we, you know, I personally think it's too late. I mean, Germany announced yesterday that they are not going to meet their climate targets. The US is not going to meet its climate targets. Many of these nations, Brazil recently said the same. They're just not going to meet their climate targets. So all of this talk of reducing it, you know, below 1.5 degrees centigrade, you know, pre-industrial levels, none of that's going to happen. So we're just going to have to watch and see it happen and know that it's too late. And for as many electric cars as we manage to get and stop, you know, mining for oil, I mean, it needed to happen 20 years ago. It's too late now. This is why Greta Thunberg is so furious. She's furious because she knows it's too late. She's the only person that talks in a kind of real, you know, uses real language to describe this. It says, one part of Alaska set a new record. The state's known for its freezing temperatures. The reading came from Kodiak Island in the southern Alaska. The Fox 5 DC meteorologist Matthew Capucci tweeted, "This is berserk. Kodiak, Alaska hit 65 degrees today, 20 degrees warmer than their previous record. Not their average, their record." He said that's like winning a 5K by 10 minutes. It's a good analogy, isn't it? Numerous nearby stations recorded similar, warmest winter temperatures on record. It says the unusual winter spell, or warm spell, in Alaska is made all the more bizarre given the fact that the state gets little sunlight during this time of the year. The sun is only above the horizon for approximately 6 hours a day in Kodiak, with the sunrise being around 10 a.m. and the sunset after 4 p.m. Moreover, this time of year is usually associated with an abundance of snow, not soaring high temperatures. He said, I would have thought such a thing not be possible. And people have shared their concerns about climate change and the impact of climate change on Alaska. The people who live there are worried. And if you live somewhere, I recognize this. When I first moved to Los Angeles, when I used to visit Los Angeles, there was no mosquitoes here because the climate wasn't suitable for mosquitoes. And then suddenly mosquitoes started showing up, and scientists were like, it's because of climate change. The mosquitoes now can live in Los Angeles. They couldn't do that before. And now I'm getting bitten to shreds. And I didn't want to move to a place where I would get bitten. I don't like being bitten. They love me. They love my blood. I'm a great flavor, mosquito flavor. Oh no, they bite me. They bite me. They love me. The mosquitoes love me. I think that I don't know what it is. It's almost like I'm like a deli, like a delicatessen. Different areas, different flavors, little bagel with schmear. They're very comfortable in my company. According to the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, Alaska is warming faster than any other U.S. state and twice as quickly as the global average since the middle of the 20th century. A 2019 analysis found that new global high-temperature records were outpacing new low records by a ratio of 2-1. That finding was corroborated by the Environmental Protection Agency. Other studies have confirmed that as global temperatures continue to rise, the ratio will continue to grow in the coming years as humans continue to pump greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. I don't really know what to say about it other than it's too late. And the problem is the moment you admit that it's too late, you're then into a whole new conversation about, well, why should we bother doing anything? Why should we bother protecting the planet at all? Why should we stop drilling and fracking and spewing all of this gas? And I don't really have an answer. Look, any change that we make is going to be beneficial, right? But have you ever known a time in your life where you're now considering the fact that the human race might not survive? Or where you know that countries that you used to visit are now uninhabitable? Places are too warm to go to? Or too politically there is now a fear. Egypt used to be a place that we would visit all the time. I've never been to Egypt. I'm talking about Brits would go to Egypt a lot. And now the advice is don't go to Egypt. It's very interesting to me that, there are places like, I don't know, the Lebanon or, places that were Turkey even. There was a period recently where they were advising Europeans not to travel to Turkey. I've been to Turkey. Couldn't eat anything there. That's not the point. The point is that if you've got places now that are dangerous politically, because of terrorism or political unrest, you've got places that are too hot or too cold because of climate change. You've got activists warning us, leaders denying, and people like me saying it's too late. What are you going to do? We're running out of time for the big debate. Batman's just joined us. Hi, Batman. Thank you for joining in. I actually put the bat signal up about 10 minutes ago. It's taken you 10 minutes to get here, but it's currently beaming up from the rooftops. Is that your real name, my dear Berry? Is your name Colby? That's wonderful. What a great name. In Alabama. Colby, thank you for joining us this morning. Okay, let's move on a little bit, because Alaska is, Alaska has to be left behind. It's time for the big debate. Are zoos good or bad? This is after a tiger has been shot and died at Naples Zoo in Florida after biting a cleaner's arm. And, it's very sad, obviously, that the cleaner's arm got bitten, but why was the cleaner cleaning when the tiger was around anyway? I mean, that sounds like something that was badly organized to me. Eco, an 8-year-old Malayan tiger, was found with the man's arm in his mouth at Naples Zoo. The man was nowhere to be found. That's not true. I just added that bit. It said the sheriff's deputy tried to get the animal to let go of the arm but was forced to shoot. They said the cleaner, who was in an unauthorized area and may have tried to pet or feed the animal, had serious injuries and was airlifted to hospital. I mean, hello? What kind of idiot goes and pets a tiger? I mean, I want to have sympathy for this guy. It says he was in his 20s. He'd entered the area near the tiger enclosure after the zoo had closed for the day. The cleaner was working for an outside company hired by the zoo, appeared to have put his arm through the enclosure's fencing. Trying to pet or feed the animal were both unauthorized and dangerous activities. The zoo said third-party cleaning is allowed to clean toilets in the gift shop, but not animal enclosures. So then they have to shoot a tiger. I mean, but why? I don't understand why they have to shoot it with a bullet. I mean, why can't you shoot it with a dart to make it fall asleep? I mean, who shot it? The police? I do worry this, because I do go to the zoo a lot. I have a pass for the LA Zoo, and I do like the zoo. Yeah, it was an endangered tiger. I mean, it's a Malayan tiger. I would have just let him eat the rest of the cleaner. I mean, just like, you might as well finish him. Who does that? I mean, it's lucky it was just his arm he stuck through the hole. But I wanted to have the big debate with you in like 3 minutes. And that is that the zoo that I visit regularly is LA Zoo. And in California, it's like second to the San Diego Zoo, which is one of the best zoos in the world. But the LA Zoo is amazing because it's huge and it's built into a huge natural park. It feels like you're in like a wildlife space. You don't really feel like you're in a zoo. And the enclosures are pretty huge. I mean, the elephant enclosure is so big that you can never see elephants. They're not like in a little pen. It is a gigantic elephant enclosure. And so half the time you have to explain to the kids that, well, the elephants are just roaming around. I mean, that's what they do. They're elephants. They've migrated to the other side of the zoo. So, I don't mind a zoo, but I also recognize, because I think that we have to educate people about animals and blah, blah. But, the other thing that's changed over the years is television at home, Like, if you watch, like, Our Planet or Planet Earth or The Blue Planet or any of these, like, Attenborough-narrated documentaries on your 4K ultra-high-definition television at home, is there a real need to go to a zoo now? Because, zoos became popular in Victorian times. And so they didn't have high-definition television back then. So maybe, and this is what we were saying earlier about the world being different. You can't refer to your friend as your gay friend. It's just not appropriate. Well, is it therefore appropriate to have animals in cages when we have HD TV? Because the whole reason for keeping animals in cages, I presume, was for educational programs. Because most zoos have a an educational program for kids. Interesting. I mean, to breed animals, I understand that would be necessary to kind of breed endangered species. They try and do that, don't they? They try and stop certain species from disappearing. But it's difficult, to get pandas to mate. It's not easy. They give them chocolates and put on some nice music, a little candlelight, and still nothing. Thanks for joining Backchannel today. I'm Anthony Davis. I'll be back tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Pacific. Next is your pal Hal.